Hello, Nick. All right. Well, hello, everyone again. Okay, let me just start sharing screen and I can begin this fun live. So basically the way I'm calling it, not so much as a negotiation, but high impact communication systems. So what goes into the high impact communication system? It's basically empathy-based communication, and we're all familiar with cognitive empathy, but actually leading scientists recognize three types of empathy, at least three types of empathy. And among them are emotional empathy, which is your desire to feel and be felt, ability to manage, distressing emotions, also disarm negativity bias, invoke productive emotional dynamic to fuel best possible outcomes. So it's the desire to feel and be felt. Compassionate empathy, which is desire to help and be helped. That's basically kind of at the top of the empathy pyramid if we are approaching communications consciously. So it is desire to help and be helped, an ability to create collaborative environments and long-term relationships. And cognitive empathy, that's where all the negotiation tools, negotiation schools reside, basically. It is your desire to understand and be understood. It is your ability to take perspectives, take sides, explore situations and driving factors without being affected by them. So you have to be neutral. If you are too hooked on the emotional dynamic of your counterpart, you're going to feel a lot of emotions, a lot of distress, and it's going to influence the way you perceive them. So cognitive empathy have to be approached from the blank slate, and you have to be as neutral as possible in order for you to move to every spectrum of emotional empathy that your counterpart is exhibiting, whether it's a negative dynamic or super positive dynamic, because the emotions are very contagious. There is no vaccinations from it. You just naturally feel what the other person is feeling. And if they exhibit very strong emotions, you're going to get hooked by it, whether you want it or not. As long as you're listening and you're actively participating in the conversation, there's going to be emotional empathy component into this, that goes into this. So cognitive empathy, that's the reason, the connection between emotional empathy and cognitive empathy is the reason why a lot of people struggling with improving their communication skills, with improving the wielding of the negotiation tools and the way these tools, what kind of effect it had on the counterpart and on the relationship, on the social dynamic. Because majority of people, when they trying to employ cognitive empathy, they coming from the position of anxiety, stress, tension, worry, fear, shame, guilt, all this the emotional dynamic that signifies fight or flight response. And fight or flight response is not something woo-woo. It's not something that you feel, sometimes majority of people actually are in fight or flight response chronically. Why chronically? Well, chronic stress is actually one of the biggest problems of the world, according to WHO right now. So chronic stress, depression, and you going to negotiation table with this dynamic and trying to employ cognitive empathy, you would have very specific outlook on the world. You're going to look out for very specific things in negotiations and the conversation that most likely is not going to be productive towards collaborative environment, towards the long-term relationship, towards actually discovery. In these states of mind, you're not able to be situationally aware because most likely you're going to be concerned by your survival, by the trust, by the comfort levels, and therefore the cognitive empathy and compassionate empathy will struggle, and the way you employ it will be not as productive as if you were in a blank slate of mind, completely calm, peaceful. So that's basically three types of empathy in a nutshell, very simple outlook on it. So then, how do we break down emotional empathy so it becomes crystal clear? So a few things really. Emotional empathy contributes to your cognitive load. And cognitive load is your mental processing power, your abilities to receive information, process it, store it, make connections, and only then you're able to employ cognitive empathy. So cognitive load is tightly connected to emotional empathy. And the way to actually measure the levels of your emotional intensity or cognitive load at any given moment, you could go through this simple exercise. If you look at this square and notice on the left side here, we have cortisol-based response, which are depleting emotions, which is your basically chronic stress, your stress in any given situation. So the upper left corner, we're looking at anger, frustration, anxiety, overwhelm. These are the charged emotions, charged emotional dynamic that's going to influence the negotiation or any conversations. On the lower left corner, we have sadness, boredom, hopelessness, despair, grief. This kind of emotional dynamic, it sucks the energy out of the conversation. On the right side, we have a DHEA hormonal response that's driving the conversation, which are renewing emotions. Again, on the right upper corner, we have enthusiasm, passion, courage, trust, acceptance, power. This type of emotion is going to drive decisions, drive enthusiasm, drive implementation in negotiations. And on the right lower corner, we have appreciation, calm, content, gratitude. This is the calm kind of a spectrum of emotional dynamic. This is basically should be your default mindset when you going to negotiation table, or having this conversation with your grandma, with your colleague, with your boss. This should be your default position from which you begin the negotiation and build rapport. Now, if you just look at this quickly, it's easy to memorize. Left side, negative emotional dynamic, depleting emotions. Right side, positive, enthusiastic emotional dynamic, renewing emotions. So when you close your eyes at any given moment of time, if you feel down, if you feel like you're not sure at which stage you're at, like how to measure your and identify your emotional dynamic, just close your eyes, imagine this square in front of you, and just mentally assess which side are you in. Are you on the left side? Are you on the right side? Are your emotions charging or draining? So that should be able to help you identify where are you at, so that you could take control of it, because awareness precedes change. Awareness precedes change. So once you become aware of the emotional dynamic, you're already influencing it. Now, without any extra special tools, without any meditations, without any mindfulness practice, once you become aware of the energy flow in your body, emotion, then you can begin employ your cognitive empathy and do the self-assessment, self-accusation audit, do the preemptive labeling on yourself, and then you can try to pinpoint the emotional dynamic that you feel in the moment, whether it's anger, frustration, overwhelm, and just explore it within. That will really help you to disarm any emotional dynamic, whether it is too enthusiastic and passionate. Sometimes that could actually derail your communication skills too, because you have to be on the same playing field with your counterpart. Whether you're too enthusiastic, passionate, or maybe too arrogant per se, you 100% convinced that it's going to go well. Same thing, become aware of it, tone down your emotional dynamic so that you increase the chances of successful outcomes in your negotiations. So basically, the way to look at it from the kind of scientific perspective and how it all works in our brain. Our brain, prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for thinking, logic, evaluation, connections. This is actually very high on the emotional spectrum, on the energy level. Normally, when we begin negotiations, we are, amygdala driving the negotiations or conversations. It is basically our stress response. We are trying to identify how much we can trust our counterpart, how much information we can reveal, how comfortable they are. So these are all amygdala-based responses. So whether we're trying to identify whether we need to turn on fight or flight, whether we need to double down on our emotions of anger, frustration, defensiveness, guardedness, or distance ourselves, become more numb, become more distant, which is a flight response, whether to freeze completely and don't react. Hippocampus regulates memory and emotions. Now, memories are very tightly integrated with our emotions. And one way of looking at emotions, what are the emotions? Emotions are energy in motion. So that's emotions, basically what drives everything. Another way of looking at it is our nervous system pumping the energy through all of other systems in our body, connecting everything through neurons and delivering information from one part of your body to another part of your body. So the way we store memories and the way we encode it in our brain, in our nervous system, it is highly related to amygdala, hippocampus, and only then prefrontal cortex. So prefrontal cortex is our mechanism of evaluating, thinking about things logically, rationally. And if you're coming from if you are totally engulfed by amygdala response, fight or flight response, thinking, logic, rational part of ourselves is not operating at 100% capacity. In fact, it's probably not operating at all, because now you're suddenly reacting to everything that's happening around you rather than responding. To create a response, you have to have a space first, mental space. And if your mental space is occupied by fight or flight response, well, it's just no fun, isn't it? So another way to look at it is, this might help to kind of commit it to your memory. When we begin the conversation with our counterpart, when we come to negotiation table, the sales meeting, we start pretty much here. Ideally, we start here on the neutral position. Now, if our counterpart is worried, concerned, anxious, we're naturally going to feel this dynamic. So this wave is going to go up. If we cannot handle the situational emotionally, if we cannot identify emotions, we cannot label it, disarm it, chances are this emotional dynamic, it's not going away. It's only going to enhance. It's only going to go up from this moment, become more and more intense. Rage, anger, irritation, frustration, anxiety, fear, panic. This could escalate really, really quickly, depending on the emotional triggers, depending on the situation you're in. So you have to be really gentle with yourself first, and only then can be gentle with your counterpart. This is when you employ your emotional empathy skills first to observe, and then employ your cognitive empathy to create labels, to create verbal observations of the dynamic, and therefore you're increasing your chances of disarming it or decreasing the intensity of it. Now, what's on the other side of fight or flight? In this case, it's social engagement. It is another way of looking at it is a rest and digest mode. So this is the states of mind where we are open, compassionate, curious. This is the states of mind where we are learning to the best of our ability. This is the states of mind when we become aware of the situational dynamic. This is the space of mind where you have space to craft your response. So it decreases defensive responses, and it increases the chances of collaboration, the chances of your counterpart being actively engaged in solving the problems that are in front of you. So at any given moment, whenever we craft a label, whenever we craft a preemptive labeling, also known as accusation audits, we in effect dealing with emotional empathy. We are dealing with the emotional dynamic of fight or flight. We are disarming it. And therefore, every time we're using preemptive labeling, every time we're using accusation audits, we're moving towards the social engagement. We decrease defensiveness. We decrease guardedness, and therefore moving towards the social engagement. Now, again, if you are yourself in a fight or flight response, one of the cool things you could do a self-accusation audit. You don't have to direct all your attention on your counterpart. You could start with yourself and say something to the effect like, oh my God, I'm feeling so nervous and frustrated right now with everything that's going on. It seems like this situation putting us in a lot of pressure. You could use us, we, to bring out this emotional dynamic that you feel to the table and see what kind of response your counterpart has. Once you land it on them, once you put it out there and you employ dynamic silence is basically, imagine it this way. This is when you craft your response somewhere at the beginning of this line. And with dynamic silence, you're letting it, take hold, you're letting it land. So you have to create a space. Dynamic silence is actually a space, a mental space for your counterpart to process things. So dynamic silence is incredibly important in your negotiations and your communications. Whenever you're about to deliver or employ cognitive empathy and use any of your negotiation tool set, employ it with dynamic silence, because now it's literally a space for it to take hold, and you can practice it consciously to the emotional dynamic or the dynamic silence. So this is basically how we're looking at emotional empathy, and the way we structure communication, high impact communication. We begin with cognitive load. We begin with self-assessment, starting with this square quadrant. We identify at which spectrum are we at right now, how loaded we are. So are we overloaded? Is our emotional empathy is actually kind of overflowing? The emotional dynamic is so strong that you won't be able to move towards cognitive empathy, towards situational awareness, towards active listening part of the conversation. So in this stage, at the beginning of the stages, just like here, if you're in neutral position, fantastic. If you're not, that means that you are overloading your mental space, and that's when the conversation becomes disjointed, fragmented, negatively charged. This is the space where your short-term memory is limited, because you're focusing on processing this emotions that are happening through you, the energy, and the focus is normally on safety and self-preservation. Now, if you're coming from a neutral position, you're going to be taking a stance of groundedness, optimism, trust. You're going to be working towards collaboration. You'll become more situationally aware. So the step number 2 is situational awareness. This is when you perceive the situation, emotion, facts, thought patterns. This is when you're building connections, long-term connections, short-term connections. This is where you able to employ your short-term memory and long-term memory, combine it together in order to use creative thinking towards, you becoming, you moving towards active listening and becoming more and more situationally, emotionally aware of your counterpart. So that is a discovery phase, when you discover what's at stake, when you're noticing how it impacts your counterpart, how you are influencing the situation, and so on. Step number 3, active listening. Crucial aspect of it. Active listening, it actually is consists of seven skills, which are, let me just have a quick look. Attention, open-ended questions, probing questions, clarification or summary, paraphrasing, be attuned to and reflect feelings, emotions, summaries here. So basic 6 to 7 active listening skills that you would have to employ in this phase of the conversation. And this is where you're observing all the underlying emotional dynamic, convictions, beliefs, the kind of language your counterpart's using, so that you can communicate at the same level, so that you can use the same language to communicate certain concepts, ideas, and actively reflect thoughts and driving emotions. And at this stage, focus is all on your counterpart. If at any point of conversation you feel internal dialogue kicks in, means that you become cognitively overloaded, you have to stop your counterpart. This is the time when you're using summaries, mirrors, open-ended questions to get clarity on the point that your counterpart is making. If you let it slide, you're going to become even more cognitive overloaded, because your counterpart is going to continue talking, and you're going to just slide down, you're going to shut down, you won't be able to process all the information, you won't be able to react and create response from the position of awareness. And the step number 4 is the tactical curiosity. It is a common pool of meaning. It's a shared pool of meaning and goals. This is the stage where you focus on solution tailoring. That's basically a collaboration phase. And majority of people are stuck in cognitive load, situational awareness, and active listening part. So for this session, we're not going to touch on tactical curiosity and collaboration, simply because it actually makes no sense. And to a lot of people, it's hard to get to this point. This basically is a closer to closing the sale, closing the deal, working on implementation. So one thing, the way to look at this, one way to look at it is, imagine you're in the sea, in a storming sea. You're the captain. You have a boat with the crew. Now the captain is your prefrontal cortex, is your executive function. The steering wheel is the emotional dynamic that you feel inside. The sea is basically the environment and the kind of the emotional dynamic, the driving factors of your counterpart, what is the energy that they bring to the table. And the ship is your resources, is your body language, is your ability to withstand the storm. So imagine your counterpart is in a great distress. They are very angry, frustrated. So basically they swaying your boat, they increasing the storm. The storm is raging on, and you are struggling to hold on to this, to the steering wheel, to take control. If you allow this emotional dynamic to take hold, the chances are you're going to let go of the steering wheel, lose control, and derail the communication. You're just going to be swayed by this energy of the environment, by the situation, and you're going to lose control. If you are able to have a good grip on the steering wheel, on navigate this sea, this raging storm, you're actually able to navigate the obstacles by first becoming aware of it. Let's say there is a rock in front of you. Now you have to navigate around it. Now, in order to navigate around the rock, you have to become aware of it first. So that's how you employ your cognitive empathy. But you can only employ cognitive empathy if you are in control. If you're in control emotionally, if you're in control cognitively of your own resources. If you cannot get hold of the steering wheel, well, the chances are you're going to fail. If you cannot communicate ideas and cannot manage your energy levels, in this case, that could be a crew that's responsible for getting you through the storms, chances are you're going to fail again. If you're not situationally aware, if your executive function is blind, if the captain cannot see the rock, the chances are that you're going to crash there and lose control again. So emotional empathy is extremely important in any interaction, in any social dynamic. And now you're becoming more and more aware of it and the effects it has on your communication skills, on the situations, on the relationships. So one more time, emotion is the energy in motion. Is the energy in motion within you, within your energy systems. It is how you communicate through your voice, through your micro expressions, through your body language. And cognitive empathy is basically your captain, your executive function that able to navigate you through emotional empathy, through emotional intensity. And compassionate empathy would be closer to closing the deal, closer to collaboration, closer to implementations of the solutions that you both put on the table during the situational awareness phase and active listening phase. So that leads us to the practical exercises of emotional intelligence so that you're able to identify and deal with the emotional dynamic at hand, whether you are in angry, frustrated, overwhelmed, charged emotional states, stress, or whether you're in the position of sadness, boredom, hopelessness, grief, despair, that sucks the energy out of the conversation. On the both spectrums on the left side, this is the emotional dynamic that will lose the control. That will, if you are in the states of minds, you're losing control rapidly. So you have to take control of the steering wheel. You have to make sure that you are in the right state of mind in order for you to get to the outcomes that you are hoping to get. The outcomes that will be productive not only for you, but for everyone involved. So before we jump into the practical exercise and actually tune in into our nervous system and disarm these emotional responses, emotional triggers that you might be feeling, I would love to ask for your comments and your thoughts. What is it, I'm going to ask everyone right now, what is the number one thing that you taken away from this? So I'm going to start from Shodan. Shodan, what is your number one takeaway from all this?
I think, getting rid of the cognitive overload is very important, especially if we want to engage in active listening, and also being situationally aware of what's going on.
Right. And notice how when we are practicing negotiation tools, mock negotiation scenarios, normally we practice emotional empathy through position of cognitive empathy. So you're kind of crafting labels, but your labels are coming from the position of overwhelm and frustration. And when you're feeling this dynamic of overwhelm and frustration, it's really hard to take your counterpart's position. It's really hard to distance yourself from this dynamic and therefore create a space for crafting of label, for becoming situationally aware, for employing preemptive labeling and so on and so forth. So I never seen anyone teach emotional empathy just yet. We're seeing caviar mindsets kind of a training from Black Swan Group and some bits and pieces from other negotiation schools. And at the same time, I haven't seen anyone diving into this deeply. Okay, Ekta, what is your number one takeaway from this?
Can you come back to me last? I'll come up and do.
Okay. All right. Next will be Nick. Nick, what is your number one takeaway? What are you getting out of this?
I'm pretty familiar with your concept of approaching the negotiation and all this system of their empathy and how it's really affect their results of negotiations. So, and in the most of the parts, I'm completely agree with this concept. And it's for me, it's really important to have the understanding of the importance of emotions when you approach any kind of negotiation or conversations. So what we are all have to thinking more about is our ability to be more aware of our own emotions and ability to recognize the emotions of the counterpart. And I think that this should take more attention, and we should look at it more precise, not only using techniques and tools, but be self-aware and aware of the emotional dynamics around around the table.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And this is exactly why I'm focusing on making these trainings to raise the awareness, to engage more people, so that we all can become more emotionally intelligent in a sense. This is emotional intelligence training in a nutshell. Okay, David, how are you doing, buddy?
Good.
Tell me,
I'm
what
good.
is your
It's
number
actually-
one? Yeah.
Well,
takeaway?
this is relatable to a movie I watched tonight. So the movie is titled Worth. It's a Michael Keaton movie, and what the premise is that after 9/11 happened with America, the airlines went to the government and said, we cannot handle all these people suing us. It will crash the economy because all the airlines will shut down. It's just too much. So they came up with this thing where they had this guy, Ken Feinberg, who Michael Keaton plays. They said, we need you to create a formula or rubric so that everybody fits into a box and they get a flat payment. And the benefit to that is you immediately get your relief. You're not tied up in the court system and burned out for 10, 20 years. You immediately get your money, but it's not going to be, these astronomical numbers that everybody hears about, whenever they spill hot coffee on them from McDonald's or something, right? And so the premise is the movie starts off with he's teaching a class and he goes, what is a life worth? And everybody kind of stops. And he goes, okay, let's do a mock scenario. You're the attorney for the plaintiff. You're representing the guy who had his wife die. Go. And basically it's like, I'll offer you 10 mil. I'll offer you 5. Let's settle on 7.5. Done. And he's like, the answer is a number. And he, at the beginning and throughout most of the movie, he doesn't meet with any of the victims. He doesn't want to talk to them because he's trying to take a very standoffish, numerical, scientific approach to it. So where he's got this algorithm, right? And towards the end of the movie, you find out it was never about the money. It just the victims wanted to be heard. They wanted their loved ones' stories to be out there. They didn't want this happening again. And so it wasn't about this massive amount of money. It's just they wanted somebody to actually show empathy and listen to them. And this kind of it actually does go into what your training is because had this guy at the start of all this take a more empathetic approach and where he sat down, treated them as humans, listened to them, and worked with them, he would not had anywhere near the difficulties that he had. But the problem is, and I'm actually a little late to your class because I was talking with another friend of mine, and he developed software for trucking companies. And one of the things, unfortunately, that explained to me is like, I don't get a lot of these things they do And I said, well, unfortunately, once you get large companies, they love standard operating procedures or disc assessments, anything to stick somebody in a box. Because while we do love the magic of a business with 10 people, you can't maintain that uniqueness and involvement with everybody when your company's got 100 people. It's just not physically possible. That's why they like, things that they can automate, things that they can make people replaceable on. And you lose a lot of that humanity and this active listening and cognitive skills that you was talked about. And I think honestly, a lot of things would improve if people started to think about what is it I'm negotiating for? What is the other side? What do they care about? And stop worrying about, I have to win this contest, and worry more about how can we make each other better.
100%. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So how can we convince, how can we get the best out of this deal? How can we strong arm them? This is all fight, flight, freeze response. It is coming from the position of lack, coming from the position of scarcity, and it is not productive towards the long-term relationship, towards collaboration, towards, getting the best possible deal and the best possible implementation. Perhaps that's even the most important part of it. Yes, you can cut the deal, you can strong arm someone, but if the deal that you're cutting would be heavily based on them implementing it, chances are they're going to cooperate, not collaborate. And cooperation is kind of a, the implementation really struggles in cooperation. And collaboration, when you both actively engaged in the outcomes and the results, you're increasing your chances of success for everyone involved. So,
I'm ready to talk now.
Yes, Hector, please.
Okay, so I just wanted to let other people go first, but because I kind of know your system too, like Nick. So my thoughts are a couple thoughts. One, you can think of it as this way, in the Gita, they talk about the authenticity versus attachment. And when people have attachment, they get fear and anger and that what you call lower levels of consciousness. And so that leads to ego-driven responses. Empathy requires us to put our ego to the side, to a degree at least, and to be able to think, as David was saying, about the other side. And the way I see it, empathy is a way we protect human dignity of another person by making them feel seen, heard, and understood. That if you think about it from the time you're a child, what is it you want from your parents, from your peers, from everyone around you, is to be felt seen, heard, and understood. And the more we allow ourselves to, when we're in difficult conversations, to reframe conflict rather as winning and losing, as let's collaborate and influence in a positive way together and find creative solutions by trying to truly understand one another, then we can create real, lasting influence. So that's just my thoughts. And one quick story, I actually was telling somebody sometime back to use these empathy-based strategies with their parent who, had tried to push them to vote for Donald Trump. And turned out her mom eventually revealed to her she never ended up voting. And she apologized to her for some things that she taught her that her daughter resented her for teaching because they were racist kind of ideas. And so it really does work when you slow down, take a step back, and allow yourself to slowly try to understand people by validating and acknowledging them, and then asking your questions of them. And I'm done.
Thank you. Yes, 100%. So what we're referring to as rapport or connection is basically a shared emotional dynamic. When you share the energy together in the collaborative space, that's what rapport is. It's just another way of looking at it. So if you're able to identify certain things that your counterpart is feeling and your counterpart is feeling heard, that creates the dynamic of trust and openness. And that's the rapport, basically, in essence. That's the emotional dynamic that's driving, that begin to drive the conversation. And again, one more time, I wanted to give credit where the credit is due about this grid that I taught you in a second, a few minutes ago. So this grid has been developed by HeartMath Institute. Nick is actually a official practitioner and connoisseur of HeartMath Institute and their techniques. What they found out is that actually the heart, which is the emotional center, sends, well, Nick maybe you can speak a little bit more about this, can sense like 5 to 8 times more information to brain than the otherwise. So there is more information coming from heart to brain than from the brain to heart. And this is our emotional center. So that's actually speaking to Mehrabian rule that has been disproven, but still it's useful in the context of what's the percentage of ratio of the communications happening on the verbal level, on the level of words, voice, and the body language. So the voice delivery and the body language is basically coming from the emotional empathy from our heart. And so this grid has been developed by HeartMath Institute. I'll highly encourage you to have a look at this. It's very fascinating research, and there are some really fascinating tools, again, scientifically validated tools for you to move away from the left side of the grid to the right side of the grid. And today, well, maybe actually, Nick, we could make one of the sessions and get people here so you could guide us through some of the practical exercises, which will be very helpful for any negotiator or communicator.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's a good idea. We could try.
Fantastic, great. So, okay, so how do we disarm our emotional dynamic? How do we come in terms of what we're feeling and not get hooked by this strong emotions, feelings that is happening at the moment, so that you can prepare for negotiation, so that you can prepare for this crucial conversation? Well, one of the approaches would be HeartMath Institute and their techniques. Meditation works too. Well, what I'm teaching people is tapping, which is based on the acupuncture and acupressure science, Chinese, ancient Chinese medicine. They found out at some point of time, about 4,000 years ago, that they are able to influence nervous system by stimulating certain energy points on the body. And well, they're using needles and pressure. In the Western world, in the 1990s, Gary Craig founded EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and basically does similar thing, but with just tapping. So by stimulating acupuncture points, you are able to influence your nervous system. And your nervous system is the responsible for communicating with your heart, with your mind. It's basically the highway of information that's constantly communication between cells, between the body organs, so that when you actually stimulating it, you're able to send the calming signal to amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for the stress response, scientifically proven again, and you are able to decrease the intensity of emotions. And again, emotion is energy in motion. So in effect, what you're doing, you are actually changing your nervous system response to the situation that you are going through. And again, scientifically proven, this is not something that happens just once when you stimulate the energy points, meridian points in our body, or the acupuncture points. It is actually rewiring our nervous system response actually permanently. And they've done this follow-up studies with people who were going through tapping exercises, and the results have been really amazing. Like you could see, there is more than 150 scientifically validated papers, peer-reviewed papers that prove the efficacy of tapping. So I would like to guide you through the exercise so that you could regain the control, emotional control in your interactions, in your negotiations, and something that you could master in the space of 5 minutes and use to your own advantage to create better collaborations, to improve their long-term relationships and move situation forward. So what we're going to do now, we're going to tap on a few acupuncture points and help you reduce the anxiety and tension associated with the lack of control that you might be feeling, about any situation, about any relationships. So imagine certain situation, maybe back in your past, maybe something that that's going to happen in future, some conversation, some negotiation that you're going to have to go through. So imagine the situation, and for a few moments, you can close your eyes, tune into your body, and notice this anxiety, this stress, this tension. And for a moment, make it as strong as possible. So enhance it, as strong as it's safe to do so. And now rate it on a scale from -10 to 0. -10 being maximum level of anxiety, stress, tension, fear. 0 being no intensity at all, calm, peaceful. And drop it in the chat so we're all gonna see the progress we're making. Normally, when we start this exercise, normally people are within -7, -8, -9. And the one way of thinking about it is at least 70% of your mental capacity is occupied by this emotional dynamic of anxiety, stress, tension, fear. So it's extremely difficult to influence conversation, influence negotiation, your counterpart from that position. So what we're going to do now, we're going to tap on a few acupuncture points and see if it makes a difference for you. And just follow me, indulge me in this exercise. You might look a little bit silly. So just be open-minded, curious, and see what's going to happen to you. So just begin by tapping on the side of the hand. Either side of the hand is fine. The points are happening on the left-hand side of the body, right side of the body, the same. And just repeat after me out loud or in your mind, it works the same. Even though I feel lack of control, I accept how I feel and I choose to relax. Even though I feel like I don't have control, I completely accept who I am. Even though I feel lack of control, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Now, the first point is on eyebrow here, at the beginning of the eyebrow. Just gently tap there on either side of the face. All these things are happening, and there is not much I can do about it. Side of the eye, right at the beginning of the eye here. And I'll have to deal with the consequences. Under the eye. It is so uncomfortable. Under the nose. And really scary sometimes. Under the mouth. And even though I'm scared to feel lack of control, collarbone point, right where the necktie is, I choose to deeply and completely love and honor myself. top of the head, right where the crown is. And maybe anyone else who contributes to these feelings. So that was first round. We're going to do second round, and then we're going to see what's going to happen. Eyebrow point. This lack of control. Side of the eye. This fear of loss of control. Under the eye. What if I completely lose my composure? Under the nose. What if I totally break down? Under the mouth. That's just horrible. Collarbone point. I'd rather be in control. Top of the head. I'd rather be the one at the steering wheel. Now gently stop tapping. Close your eyes. Take a deep calming breath. And say, I release all emotional attachments to the need of control. Now, again, tune into this situation. You know, you are about to do the speech, or it's something that that's happened before, and it's raising your anxiety levels. You feel tension. So tune into your body and rate it on the scale from -10 to 0 again. -10 again is maximum level of anxiety, stress, tension, and 0 being completely calm and peaceful. And drop it in the chat so we can all see the progress we're making. So we have 0, -2, -5, -3. So that's already a dramatic shift here. But it's also still influences your dynamic, your emotional energy that you bring to the table, negotiation table. So that means that if you are at -3, that means that 30% of your emotional capacity is occupied by processing the stress, anxiety, and tension. And that's just not productive for you or anyone at the negotiation table. So let's just continue. And Shah, just indulge us. You just joined us. So what I'll encourage you to do, just stay open-minded and just follow what we do and see what it does for you emotionally. So what we're doing right now, we're going through this exercise to decrease the emotional intensity. So focus on some situation that's, you know, you feeling anxious about, that you feeling stress, tension, and worry, and just let me guide you through the exercise. So again, guys, come back to the eyebrow point and keep tapping on this at the beginning of eyebrow and just repeat after me. I'd rather be in charge of everything. Side of the eye. And that puts me in so much pressure and overwhelmed. Under the eye. Sometimes it feels like being a victim. Under the nose. Things that just keep happening to me. Under the mouth. And I keep suffering the consequences. Collarbone point. Banging my head against this invisible wall. Top of the head. And realizing this, I choose to let it all go. Eyebrow point. I release and let go of all the fears. Side of the eye. I release and let go of all the frustrations. Under the eye. I release and let go of all the sadnesses. Under the nose. I realize and accept all the things I cannot control. Under the mouth. I choose to focus on things that in my control. Collarbone point. I choose to feel more and more in control. Top of the head. I now release all emotional attachments to things beyond my control. Now gently stop tapping, close your eyes, take a deep calming breath. Again, and come back to the situation that you have in mind. Tune into your body and allow yourself to feel. And on a scale from -10 to 0, -10 being maximum level of distress, anxiety, and 0 being completely calm and peaceful, where are you now? Drop it in the chat. And sometimes what happens, the intensity can go up, something else might come to your mind, maybe some completely irrelevant memory can pop in your mind, and it's all fine. As long as the intensity level is moving up or down, you're making the progress. And at any point of time, you can just tap on these points by focusing on this emotional dynamic, on these images in your head, maybe some voice that you're hearing from your counterpart or from someone else, and just tap through these points, and that will release the emotional intensity. So now that we are, if I'm looking at the chart right now, you're looking at -1, -2, -1. So we are making a great progress here. So now it's time to for us to move on and tap on the kind of a positive side of things to make sure that we are kind of moving towards the positive emotional dynamic. So again, let's come back to the eyebrow point. And I'm just going to continue voicing the lack of control dynamic. I become aware of more things that are beyond my control. Side of the eye. I bring forward all emotional attachments to things beyond my control. Under the eye. And I choose to let it all go. Under the nose. All the way back through my past. Under the mouth. Clearing all the things that cloud my thinking. Collarbone point. I choose to focus my energy on what I can control. Top of the head. And I now begin to feel unexpected sense of ease and peace in my body. Now stop, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and say, I restore the right energy flow in my body. And just observe. Now, come back to the eyebrow point, put a smile on your face, enjoy the process. I now realize and accept feelings I cannot contain. Side of the eye, I can't change, can't control it. Under the eye, I begin to find courage to make peace with myself. Under the nose, I begin to notice more and more difference between the things within my control. Under the mouth, and the things outside of my control. Collarbone point. And I choose to be very clear about that. Top of the head. And I begin to open my mind to a new way of thinking. Eyebrow point. And with each tap on my face, I begin to open my mind to a new way of thinking. Side of the eye. I choose to focus on what I am in control of. under the eye. And I choose to feel surprising sense of lightness and comfort in my body. Under the nose. I wonder, how much in control can I be? What's possible for me? Under the mouth. How would it feel? What would it sound like? Collarbone point. I now begin to generate warm sensation of gratitude in my heart. Top of the head. I begin to generate uplifting sensations of joy in my body. Now stop tapping. Take a deep, relaxing breath. And say, I begin to pump the sensations of enthusiasm throughout my body. Take another deep breath. And say, I begin to feel completely and utterly bulletproof. And just tune into your body right now. Maybe you can come back to the same situation that you were focusing on a few minutes ago, the one that was making you anxious, stressed, tension. But this time, on the scale from 0 to 10, 10 being completely joyful, happy, and 0 being calm, peaceful, where do you find yourself to be? Just drop it in the chat so we'll see if we're able to move it for you. So we have 0, -5, Ekta, Shah, Nick 1. So what's happening right now is that we are able to calm our nervous system. And if you were focusing on the certain scenario or situation or person, most likely it's going to look different for you right now because the emotional dynamic is just not the same. And when we started this exercise, what you evaluated in yourself, the emotional dynamic of stress, anxiety, fear, tension was -8, -6, -4. And now we're looking at 0, 0.5, and 1. So that's a dramatic difference in an essence. And I would like to ask you for your feedback first. So Shodan, can you give us a quick insights of what was happening within you when you were going through this exercise with us?
I feel a lot more calmer right now. And yeah, I think doing this several times has, helped me. I kind of do it every day, every morning for the past 1 week. So it's helped me quite a bit.
Fantastic. That's really encouraging. And did you have certain situation in mind, a certain person when you were going through this exercise?
So can you please say that again?
Yeah. So did you focus on something specific? Maybe it was some situation, some negotiation, maybe some person.
Like right now, I'm a little tired, so probably wasn't thinking about anything in particular.
Okay. And just notice that you don't have to focus on anything. You could just focus on the sensations, the energy that's in your body, and still make a dramatic difference within your system. Thank you for sharing, Shodan. Ekta, what's your observations? What's your aha moments from this exercise today?
What do you mean by aha moments?
Well, sometimes when we are focusing on some situations or some person or some negotiation, and we're feeling very anxious or a lot of fear, and then we go through the exercise and we feel completely calm and peaceful. Sometimes these memories or our imagination leads us somewhere else. Sometimes you might be noticing there is certain tension in your body, but then suddenly it's gone or it's moved somewhere else. So that's what I mean by kind of aha moment.
No, I mean, I just, whatever tension I had kind of reduced as we were going through it. But I don't know, nothing
And did you have some
different.
certain situation in mind, or person, or certain scenario?
Yeah,
Okay.
by the time we were, sorry, I'm half tired. By the time we were closer to done, it was kind of like I was letting it go.
Well, Hector just illustrated something brilliantly. The yawn. Yawn accompanies this exercise very often. So tapping and yawning means that you are moving your energy, means that something is shifting within you. So yawning is a good sign. It means that you are making a progress. And granted, for a lot of you guys, it's evening. So of course, you're going to be feeling tired. Okay, Nick, what was your observations going through this exercise? Something that's popped in your mind, some insights?
I'm really like their statements that you guide us through this positive statements, mostly because it's gives some opportunity to change the way of thinking. And after we made a couple of rounds to decrease their emotional intensity of negative feelings, and this positive part, I really enjoy it. And sometimes during this exercise, the statements, it's really help to guide attention to some parts of situations, or the new waves, how you can think about this emotional dynamics and move from negative to the positive. This is really great.
Right.
I like it.
Right. Thank you for sharing your insights. Yeah, so we're doing reframing. First of all, we're focusing on the negative aspects. We're voicing it, we're giving it a voice, and then we're striving to reframe it in a positive light. Once we get into the open states of mind, we are able to reframe and rewire certain responses that we having in the forefront of our brain related to the situation that you're imagining in your head. And you notice that a lot of negotiations are happening within us. A lot of conversations and a lot of disturbances are happening within us. So even before you're stepping, to the negotiation table, even before you are about to make this phone call, if you're stressed, anxious, worried, that's going to manifest one way or another in the way you communicate. And just to give you kind of a wrap up this exercise, what we've done here, we tapped into our emotional empathy. So it's a desire to feel and be felt. So you were willing to actually feel the emotions within your systems, recognize it, and self-manage these distressing emotions. You were able to disarm negativity bias within yourself and move towards the productive emotional dynamic to fuel the best possible outcome that you set out to achieve. So from this position, again, let's have a look at this grid that was developed by HeartMath Institute. Just mentally imagine, just take it away with you. Look at this, close your eyes, have it in front of in your mind eyes, so you could use it as a tool in your communication before you approach communication. And even at any point of time and during communication is, where are you right now? If you are, still under overwhelmed, frustrated, angry, perhaps you are still in a fight-flight response, which is a sympathetic nervous system response to the situation. Well, according to the ratings that you dropped in the chat, all of you are right now in the relaxation state of mind, in the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is the states of mind where you begin to influence the situation, conversations, dynamic, social dynamic in a positive way. And when we are in the positive states of mind, we become smarter, we become more productive, more creative, more enthusiastic, and be able to exert more influence on the situation and on our counterpart. So at this stage, we are, if you look here again, we are grounded, we are mindful, we are connected to our self, right? We are safe. And from this state of mind, you can begin the social engagement. And at this stage, I think I'll wrap it up.
Hey,
It's been.
can I say something?
Oh, please.
Yeah, before, to the people who are new in this sort of thing that we're doing here, this isn't just something, this is something even the top negotiators you talk to and high performance coaches, they exist, for athletes, for negotiators, for all sorts of people. Doing a mindfulness approach of any form, EFT, meditation, whatever works for you, is one of the most critical steps we can have in successful negotiation. And I just wanted to emphasize that because I'm on Clubhouse where there are a lot of, top professionals, and whoever you talk to of the most successful people in the world, they all have some form of a mindfulness practice. So don't just come one day and then rub it off the next and think, oh, this is nothing. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Axa. Yes, so it's basically a high performance skill. Your emotional flexibility, your self-management and managing the distressing emotions. In order for you to get to the flow states of mind, high performance states of mind, it is all stems from parasympathetic response of your nervous systems, and then moving towards the levels of cortisol and tension that propels you forward. So what we're doing right now here, this is just disarming the stress, tension, and anxiety. But in essence, we actually already taking step towards the high performance states of mind, towards the flow. And that's a topic for another conversation. I think if Nick wouldn't mind, we're going to make this session at some point of time where we're going to be focusing on flow states of mind and the high performance, and how you too can achieve those states of mind without a guesswork, whether it's going to happen or not happen. This actually applies beyond the conversations, beyond negotiation. You're talking about anything and everything you approach in life. So this emotional flexibility, emotional empathy, self-awareness, self-connection, safety, openness, curiosity, compassion, it is something to strive for. It should be your default state of mind to operate from. And now today, you just had a glimpse of it. Know that it could be actually your default state of mind rather than chronic stress, anxiety, tension, worry. And you can communicate through the rest and digest response, through the joy, through the presence, groundedness. So I invite you to join us in our mock negotiation practice. Outreach to me if you're interested in doing mock negotiation exercise and practice your communication skills. Outreach to me if you are feeling tension, stress, anxiety before this upcoming crucial conversation on negotiation. If you are, going through the job interview, if you are about to cut this deal of your lifetime and you just don't know how to prepare yourself, how to get in this high performance states of mind, just reach out to me. We're gonna go through some of these exercises and dissect your situation, your emotional dynamic, and install something more productive, something that you could use something that you can use during this negotiation that's coming up for you. So thank you very much, guys, for coming today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. Spread the word. I think it's important for everyone to have this conversation that we have today. Some of the exercises that we've gone through today, again, spread the word. I'm hoping to have a bigger engagement, to introduce this to more people, so that we all can cut better deals, so that we all can become a better communicators, so that we can all exert more influence on the situation and the counterparts that we come and the people that we're coming in touch with. So again, thank you very much for coming to negotiation minds and lack of control training. Today we move towards actually a kind of control that you must have in order to have a productive social engagement and move everyone forward. Thank you very much again. My name is Eugene, and I speak to you on the next session.
Thank you.
Thank
Eugene.